Hey guys, this is Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, and today I'm going to be talking about what exactly sets Dostoevsky's novels apart from any other author that I really read. So let's jump right into it. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of Dostoevsky, anything that you have noticed about his style that you really like as well, or what you don't like. We welcome contrasting opinions here. So thank you so much for watching. Let's jump into it. So first of all, Dostoevsky really likes to play with suspense. He's like such a suspenseful writer when it comes to his plots. So I'm starting with the plot elements here, really. He likes to kind of hint at things. He'll show characters acting in a certain way without telling you why they're acting that way. So he keeps you in suspense about their motivations, about what's going through their head, about their plans, about everything. And I actually really enjoy this about his novels, although it can be confusing. But I think it's a very distinct mark of his writing. There are authors who do this now, but when you hit the realization moments in his novels, it's so powerful. It's usually like, those are my favorite moments in the book. And there's lots of other amazing moments that he has too. So that's saying something. I think he's very good at suspense. And he also does something very unusual, I think, for a classic author, and that is, in his plots, he will start you in medias res, meaning there's already action happening when you're starting. He's not starting at the beginning of the story. So a lot of times he'll show you something, and the classic example of this, of course, is Crime and Punishment. You don't really know what has happened to the main character to make him go out and commit the crime they commits until after he commits it. It's just very interesting how he works with the motivations of Raskolnikov in that book. But anyways, he starts that very quickly with Raskolnikov kind of going back and forth about committing an illegal act. So this is part of his style. So let's jump into the next section, which is style. Part of his stylistic choice is to keep you in suspense. I think it's a very characteristic element of his style. Also, his vitality in his writing. I just feel it like it's so immediate and engrossing so much of the time when he wants to be, when things are coming together. There will frequently be those periods where you just can't stop reading, alternated with periods where you need to sit back and just think for a while. And it kind of works out because I end up pondering over these longer periods, the really difficult sections, whereas the quick sections where it's like story, chop, 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 I speed through those sections, and it just makes me feel better about taking 3 months to read a Dostoevsky book. So I like that about his style. When I really get into his work, I just want to sit there and read it for hours. And I love classics, but there's not a lot of classics that make me just so like desperate to continue reading and finish what I'm reading. Another stylistic choice that he does is conversation is usually where information is delivered. Conversation is the primary mode of discovery in his books, and this goes right along with show and not tell. Certain sections can feel info dumpy because it's a character explaining things, but I don't ever really feel that way in his books, like it's an info dump, because he's made me desperate to know what's going on by showing all these things happening that I don't understand. And I'm like, but wait, what happened? Can we go over this again? And then you do, and then you get it. So it works for me very well, even though there's some confusion in there sometimes. Now, another thing that I really just love about Dostoevsky, and this, I think also Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads loves it because she did the Russian Lit Party tag, and she used Dostoevsky as the characters prompt, who has the best characters. And I 100% agree. Dostoevsky's characters are very psychologically acute, often very distinct. They are motivated by different philosophies and philosophies of life and of action. And I mean, they're oftentimes reflecting the period, all of the intellectual influences that are coming into St. Petersburg at the time. His characters reflect all those, but they are also their own very unique people. I think his females are very interesting for the most part. There's some in certain books, I would say they're not as interesting as maybe some of the guy characters. But definitely in The Idiot and Crime and Punishment, I think the female characters are fascinating. They're so different from each other and from the men as well. So, but still very human. Like, I think he had a good handle on that. Some classic authors do not. The humor also in the character interactions is one of the shining stars of Dostoevsky's style. They're just There's just so much humor in there. They often are acting kind of wild. His characters will go back and forth just like real people on decisions. And Raskolnikov has this duality of wanting to be a good man and then also thinking that he's above any laws of good and evil. He swings wildly back and forth between the two, but at the same time, you're like, I kind of like this guy, Raskolnikov, which is really saying something considering his actions in the book. But yeah, that's just the kind of characters that Dostoevsky portrays. They're very complex, and I really appreciate that. They're very humorous a lot of times. Their interactions with other people, there's like a lot of shouting. You can just picture it in all caps. And some of my favorite characters in literature are from Dostoevsky's novels. One of those, of course, being Razumikin from Crime and Punishment. Also, I think that his characters are very original in a lot of ways. I don't ever find them to be stereotypical in a bad way. Figuring out their motivations and their personalities can be as difficult as it is in real life because they're just that complex. His characters have many layers, and I love it so much. And then finally, the setting really sets his novels apart as well. It's just very unique. A lot of them are set in St. Petersburg in times when there are really interesting intellectual currents running through there. And so there's debates about things like that. Like in The Idiot right now, I can't think of them right off the top of my head, what they all are. But like suicide is debated in one conversation in The Idiot. Nihilism frequently comes up. I just think that anything that the young people were thinking about and clashing with the old people over in this time in Russia, in St. Petersburg, it comes through in Dostoevsky's novels, and he has a strong opinion about them, and his characters have their own strong opinions that often go back and forth. And a lot of times those speech scenes where you're seeing that, there's a lot of humor injected, like the audience is groaning, like, oh, here he gets up on his soapbox again, you know how people do with politics. Well, same thing with Dostoevsky's characters. People get annoyed, they talk for too long, and yeah, it's just great. So I love that. I love that his novels are so deeply tied to the time and the setting, but they're also very universal in their themes because none of those are things that we don't talk about anymore. Nihilism still comes up. Suicide still comes up. Who is above the law and not still comes up. These conversations are so universal, even though they are specific to the times as well. So I love that. And I think he just gives you a really special glimpse into the development of Russia, because this is obviously, he's writing before the Russian Revolution, but a lot of the currents that were motivating people during the Russian Revolution are already there, and he's discussing those things. So it's like a pre-revolutionary Russia under the Tsar that's just really unique and interesting to read about. So those are some of the things that to me makes Dostoevsky really stand out. I'm sure there's more if I sat down and thought about them, but yeah, I just think his work is so unique and stunning. Let me know what you think down below. I would love to hear from you guys. Okay, I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.